You're listening to THEME-ADDICTS, presented by UnleashStrengths.com, the only show that embraces your addiction to strengths. Well, hello, everyone. This is your host of THEME-ADDICTS, Andy Sokolovich. I am a Gallup certified strength coach and the owner and lead coach in a little practice called UnleashStrengths, nestled right here in the small Midwest town of Clinton, Iowa. I am a coach for hire. I've been specializing in enhancing employee engagement, recognition, and overall job satisfaction now for the last year. If you are interested in listing the skills of a strength coach or are looking for a speaker for your next workshop, conference, seminar, bar mitzvah, whatever it is, go ahead and give me a ring, 815-441-2219. Again, that's 815-441-2219, or you can email me directly, Andy@UnleashStrengths.com. Now, the show you're listening to today, THEME-ADDICTS, is the only show that exists that embraces your addiction to strength. It's a podcast series designed to highlight the massive impact the Clifton StrengthsFinder assessment has had on now over 11 million people. That's impressive. And from what I understand, we're getting closer and closer to 12. And it's our belief here at Unleash Strengths, the best way to promote its effectiveness and proven results is to interview those who've experienced the power of strengths-based development firsthand. Our guest today is intimately aware of his strengths and wants nothing more than to share his story in an effort to help others succeed. For more information or to schedule your very own interview, that's right, you too can be on THEME-ADDICTS. Go ahead and email me again, Andy@UnleashStrengths.com, or that telephone number, 815-441-2219. And it wouldn't be a podcast if I didn't tell you where we were cruising around the social media webosphere. Facebook.com/UnleashStrengths and Twitter @UnleashCSF. All right, let's get right into it. Today I'm excited to have Mr. Ted Baird with me. Ted, how you doing? Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and then go reveal your top 5.
Hey, Andy, doing great today. Coming to you from beautiful, sunny Phoenix, Arizona on a bright, crisp morning. And I am stoked about being on your show today. You are doing a great job of leading the charge for strengths-based podcasting and awareness out there. I love what you're doing. I have had the privilege of being around strengths now and using StrengthsFinder for about 10 plus years. Everything from watching it transform my own life to the lives of the teams that I've built and organizations that I've helped consult with. Love StrengthsFinder. I'm a theme addict as well, and I love getting to talk about strengths any chance I get, and very excited about my future with StrengthsFinder. My top 5 are: number 1, activator; number 2, woo; number 3, communication; and number 4, significance. And my 5th out of my top 5 is maximizer.
All right, Ted, that's an impressive top 5. And for those of you that hear the cars and things going out around Ted's voice, he is outside. Now, that is so awesome because I'm stuck here in the Midwest where it's a little dreary today. So I'm a little envious of not only some of your themes, but also the location that you're in, beautiful Arizona.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, it's a great spot to be in, and love getting to just hang outside, and hopefully we don't have too many fire trucks rolling around the background.
No, I kind of like it. I like the ambiance. So first question I always ask is, Ted, who introduced you to StrengthsFinder and why? You said 10 plus years. Let's rewind the hands of time back a decade. How did it ever come into your life?
Well, I had similar to you, really, Andy. I had somebody in my life that handed me the book StrengthsFinder 2.0, and it really created that pivotal shift for me that allowed me to be able to understand things about myself. And at the time, I was leading and building a volunteer-based organization. I had a team of about 15 or 16 paid staff that I was leading. And that tool, StrengthsFinder, not only created a window for me to understand my own wiring internally in terms of the way I think and feel and behave, but it created a great window into my team. And it began to ultimately create for us a foundation from which we would run not only the whole internal organization, but also the complete volunteer base of that organization.
That's impressive. And how many people did you say again were within that organization?
Well, we had about 15 that were on our paid staff, and at one time we had over 1,000 people in the volunteer organization. So there was a lot of exposure to strengths at both levels, and it became, like it is in many organizations today, the almost you repeat your name and you repeat your top five. So it was so much a part of our internal culture, and it drove so much of what we came to understand about each other, how we operated, how we worked together. Why certain things got said in meetings, why certain things didn't get said in meetings. It was really, really a remarkable tool that ultimately launched me on about a decade-long trajectory of using strengths in every part of my life.
So let's go a little bit more in depth in that. Since that day, what has your strengths journey looked like? Explain to us a little bit how you've been applying this both professionally and personally.
Well, it really has been a great journey for me. I think there have been times where it has been so forefront in my mind that I couldn't escape it no matter what I did. If I'm ordering coffee at the coffee bar, I'm not only thinking about my woo, which kicks in to get a great cup of coffee and connect with that barista behind the counter, but I'm also looking at them and trying to understand, okay, what's their strength base? Where are they coming from? What do I hear or see coming out of them? And so it's really has been an integral part of my life at every point. I think interestingly enough that over the last few years as I've been doing some personal development coaching and some organizational consulting and even some corporate training and executive coaching, that I'd sort of taken StrengthsFinder, and it was the bedrock piece. Before I engaged in any client, it was the first piece that I had them do. And to be honest, Andy, I wasn't aware at the time that StrengthsFinder was actually certifying independent coaches. And I had one of my personal coaching clients that came to me and said, hey, I'm a VP of sales for a national company, and I'd like for you to come in and do a strength-based workshop with my sales team. And so I began to put the material together for that day. And in the course of doing that, I had this re-energized sense of connection to StrengthsFinder. I also discovered during that process that StrengthsFinder was certifying independent coaches, which they hadn't done in their history, and which I had always been an advocate for and begged them to do. And when it finally happened, it clicked for me, and it's like, you know what, this is my next step in my StrengthsFinder journey. I got to get certified as a coach. I believe in this tool. I've seen it transform not only my life, but the lives of individuals and teams that I've been connected to. And it really, really has been a powerful experience for me to implement at every level.
Excellent. Now I know a little bit more about your funding campaign, but for those that are listening out there, maybe you want to go ahead and throw some websites out there, or how individuals can help you succeed and enhance your professional abilities with a certification from Gallup.
Well, I appreciate that opportunity, Andy. Yeah, I'm actually in the process, because I am an independent coach and do some work with organizations as a contractor, not internally. I'm having the responsibility to come up with my own tuition and travel to go to Omaha and to set in the accelerated strengths course program for about a week. And I've selected a target date for that. And basically I'm asking friends and family and clients and complete stranger passerbys just to help me fund this effort. And so, it's a pretty hefty tuition fee. And rightly so, because the value of the certification is significant. And so you can find out more about my journey, or even click on to help me with that process of raising my tuition and my travel funds at tedbaird.com. There's a video there, about 3.5 minutes, that explains my journey and really what I'm offering for those who would help me get my certification through Gallup.
Excellent. And I'll make sure I include a link for that in the show notes, because, everybody that I've connected with or I've introduced myself to is now aware of the fact that I funded my Gallup certifications, very similar to how you're approaching it, through a website called Indiegogo. So it's it's amazing out there. Some people feel really weird about asking others for financial assistance to pursue their dreams or to attain any kind of heightened level of certification or education. But I'm a firm believer that if you don't ask, you're not trying, and you just never know what the response is going to be. So I will make sure I include a link to that video and your website on my show notes. Now, moving on, let's talk about that famous strengths aha moment, the time that everybody has when they first take the assessment. They have their theme insights report in front of them, they look at it and they think, wow, this is legit. Like, this is almost crazy accurate. It's weirding me out. Talk a little bit about that aha moment, that first time you realized that this had some traction and it was legit.
Well, it was very, very powerful for me because I was, so amazed, first of all, that an instrument, a tool, could be incredibly accurate in diagnosing my thoughts, my feelings, and my behavior. I was literally blown away by it. I was like, oh my God, that is me. And oh, wow, I do that. And I can't. So it was almost as if my initial top 5 description of my strengths was custom written for me. And I thought, they can't know me this well with this kind of a diagnostic tool where I took, a test online, and all of a sudden, immediately it spits back to me this blueprint of my life that so nailed me. I was just literally blown away by it. And then, interestingly enough, I guess also, I began to realize that there are things about me in these 5 descriptions that I don't necessarily see about myself every day, but they're either thoughts or feelings or behavior that I kind of know are there, but I've never had any language to describe it. And all of a sudden, when I had language to describe it, and I began to see how all of my top 5 work together and nuance each other, it was just a powerful window into my own soul. And it gave me, really, I think, exactly as we describe it, it gave me a new sense of strength about who I was as an individual in the world.
No, I agree. And I hear a lot of people say that, the beautiful thing about strengths is you know who you are internally. You know what makes you tick. You know the fuel that ignites that fire, but you don't necessarily have the terminology to slap onto it and describe it to others until you're able to embrace StrengthsFinder. And for me, it was the very, very same thing. As I knew I had all these talents, and people would say, what are your talents? What are you good at? And for the longest time, it was something mechanical. It was something I could do with my hands. I didn't really know how to convey what internally, drove me until I started learning about the 34 themes and became a theme addict. So it does pay off in dividends. Now, Ted, tell us a little bit about how you use StrengthsFinder in your business or everyday life. I know you touched on this a little bit, but so when you meet with a client or you meet with a friend, how do you go about introducing them to the concept of strengths-based development?
Well, it's a great question, Andy, because I think, many of the clients that I work with, as you do, they've been through some sort of a personality profile, or they've been through some kind of testing where they, the attempt was to get a handle on who this person is and how this person's wired and how they might fit within the larger construct and culture of a company. And for me, coming at it from a point of strength has been very, very important to be able to help executives or help teams understand the value and the differentiating piece of StrengthsFinder. One of the things that I love so much about StrengthsFinder is, we focus on the positive aspects of behavior. At Gallup, they actually say, it's not about, fixing weaknesses and fixing things that are broken. It's not that we're trying to ignore those pieces, but we want to manage them by surrounding ourselves with people who have complementary strengths to ours, so that some of our lower themes in our 34 get covered up by people that are really, really strong in those areas. And so for me to be able to help an executive or help a personal coaching client understand that let's take a real in-depth picture of who you are, but let's put it in a language that's easy enough to use and simple enough to use that you can begin to train yourself and raise your own personal level of awareness to see these themes of thought and behavior and feeling being lived out in your life in every single aspect of your life, not just at work, but also, at home or in the social activities that you participate with or your volunteer activities or whatever. When those themes become apparent to you and you catch yourself, it's like, oh my God, that was my woo kicking in. Or, wow, I just described this dinner that I had over at, my favorite restaurant in Phoenix to my friend with such vivid detail that like they were salivating out of the corner of their mouth. I go, that's my communication. I think when I'm able to get a client to understand that that's the language that begins to surface in their thinking processes and then subsequently in their conversations, it creates the traction needed for them to embrace a new tool for their lives that ultimately moves them forward personally, but also in their organization.
I agree. Very, very well said, Ted. And I think the first milestone in any kind of strengths-based journey is to identify your own top five. But really, what I got excited about as I graduated from that first milestone of identifying what's within me was having the ability to see what was within others and identify their strengths. And I think that's when you really start to mesh well as a team. So, very good. What advice would you share with someone? Okay, well, let me go back a second. Talking about how you introduce assessment and the Clifton Strengths Finder to others, have you ever received any kind of resistance? And you use the term personality test, but have you ever received the phrase or the reply, not just another personality test, I don't want to do this? And if so, how do you kind of get around that roadblock? How do you help others realize that this isn't just another personality test? This isn't something you're going to find on the back of a magazine. This is something that's going to pretty much give them the insight to help them live a better life.
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I have periodically ran into some forms of resistance. I think I tend to see, as I said, some people that have taken some form of testing previously, and they walked away with that maybe with a little better understanding about themselves, but not necessarily anything that moved forward from that moment. They might know from a Myers-Briggs test, I'm an ISFJ or whatever, but what does that really mean, and how does that translate into the activity of your everyday life? Whereas when I can explain to a potential client, listen, we're gonna break down your internal wiring in areas that you're already strong, and we're going to put it in a language that will be so commonplace to you. And then I use my own top five as an example for that. I'll say something like, for example, I have a particular strength in my top five called maximizer. And my maximizer looks at people or it looks at situations and it says, here's where that situation currently sits on a scale of 1 to 10. It's at a 3. But the potential of that situation or the potential of that person is an 8. And my maximizer says to me, how do we move that person or that situation from where it currently sits at a 3 all the way up to an 8, but how do we do it right now? And when I can begin to explain to them in really simple language the value of strengths and of understanding and seeing them firsthand in my own life, I think something clicks for them and they begin to translate, okay, I see how some of these, quote, made up words that Gallup uses for our strengths actually become very translatable for me and very understandable to me so that I get a better handle on who I am and how I'm wired. Okay, you know what, Ted, I'll give it a shot. I'll take a 35-minute test. And if it'll give me that kind of insight into my life, sure, I'll give that a shot. So that's one of the ways that I try to get around sometimes those roadblocks. I don't find it all the time, but I have found it a little bit, and that's one of the ways that I really try to work around it.
Very nice. Now, we're going to put you in a scenario where you're sitting behind somebody who's sitting at a desk. They had just finished taking the assessment. They get their report. They hit Control P. They print it out. They're looking at it, and then they turn to you as a strengths enthusiast and a future coach. They turn to you and they say, now what? How do you respond?
Well, I think I've taken this cue from Gallup and Andy from you and other strength coaches that I have some relationship with. The first thing that I have them do is to take a couple highlighters and begin to work through those theme descriptions. And what I ask them to do is to simply highlight the words or the phrases that jump out at them. So, for example, if you catch yourself once you read a word or phrase go, wow, that's me, I want you to highlight that phrase. And if there's a phrase that you look at and you read and you go, I don't really see that in myself, or maybe you just flat out disagree with it and you say, that's not me. Just put a line through it, put a red line through that one. And then I begin the process of, obviously through coaching, helping them understand and see sometimes things that they didn't naturally see in themselves, or maybe they disagreed with. But the first piece for me is beginning to make the connection for them between what we title as the theme our top 5, and the descriptions that are ascribed to those certain behaviors. And if I can begin to create those links for them, and then take those descriptions and put them in real world scenarios for their life, which, as a coach, you would know, Andy, we begin to ask questions of them. Do you see this particular behavior in you? You have competition in your top 5. Do you find yourself often only able to approach situations if you know you can win? And they're like, oh my God, yeah, I mean, everything. I'm like, yeah, everything. Like, you won't even have a conversation with anybody, or you won't engage in any sort of like recreational activity, or maybe you won't even sit down across the deal table and try to sell someone your product or your service if you don't believe you have a chance of winning. And they're like, that's exactly right. So if I can put it in a real world scenario for them, and they can begin to see themselves living out the behaviors of that particular theme, that helps me, I think, contextualize it for them. And that's a great first step.
Very well said. Very well said. That is a perfect first step. And then I always tell on the heels of that is, don't keep your top 5 secret. It's not the best kept secret out there. Go and ask your spouse, your mother, your father. Get somebody that's really, really close to you and share that top 5 report with them as well, because it's kind of always it gives a different perspective when you share it with somebody who knows you probably better than you know yourself. So it is insanely insightful, and I think every time that I give somebody their initial report and explain it just like you had said, when you can go through tick by tick and go through those theme descriptions, and they look at you and they think, how do you know this about me? Well, it's written right here. It's part of your assessment results, and that usually gets the light bulb up, and that's the aha moment.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also love it when you encourage someone to share their results with a spouse or with a friend. And I remember the first time my wife read through my top 5 descriptions, and she was sitting over there laughing, and I was like, what's so funny? And she's like, I can't believe how perfectly this tool nailed you. And so it was, in one way, not only did I understand that aha moment for me, but it was very validating to find somebody that whose opinion I respected, obviously in this case my wife, also validating the descriptions of those particular themes in me. And I think that's a great way also to help people understand it, is hand it to somebody else, let them read it, and give you personal feedback about what they see in you.
Absolutely. So activator, woo, communication, significance, maximizer. Out of those top 5, do you have a favorite?
Well, that is a tough one, I think, because I've been so familiar with these top 5. I guess if I had to say, my favorite is probably woo. I enjoy the opportunity to walk into a social situation and immediately begin to build a relational connection with the person on the other side of the conversation, whether that's in a bank or a grocery store, or even stopping to help somebody along the freeway, being able to build a bridge of relationship and win them over. That's probably one of my favorite strengths. I see it come out so naturally in myself, and it's easy for me to kind of click it on when I need to. And yeah, that's probably one of my favorite of my top 5.
Yeah, and I ask that question every interview, and recently I've interviewed several coaches from South Africa who have said they identify those in their teachings as the core talent, and that talent kind of is a tip of the spear that helps clear the way for the others to kind of follow in trails. So really interesting. And I looked back through most of these interviews that I've done so far, and I was archiving the individuals' names and their top 5, and I found out that woo pops up quite often. So it just shows who's attracted to being a guest on the show. Normally it's the folks out there with some high woo that are interested in hopping on here and being on a podcast. So it's always really cool to see.
That's great.
Now, we're going to get a little introspective here. Looking back, let's say strengths never entered your life. The tool never, it was out there in existence, but you never stumbled across it. How do you think your life would be a little bit different?
Well, I think it would be radically different on a couple levels. One is, when it comes to my initial work with StrengthsFinder, which was leading a team and leading an organization, I wouldn't have had near the depth of understanding or the capacity for relationship with some of the people that I led, that I managed, and that I worked side by side with. It was just such a clarifying understanding of who these people are, that I already had high value for who they were in my life and what they represented to our organization. But all of a sudden, to see them through the lens of StrengthsFinder and to see their themes emerging as strengths in their life, it was very, very connected for me, very deeply impactful for me, and as a team leader, as an organizational leader. That's probably the first standout for me. Secondly, as I've used StrengthsFinder in my personal coaching practice, giving individuals a tool to help understand themselves better was such a powerful piece for me. And because Gallup and StrengthsFinder puts it in such simple language, it didn't take long for them to be able to be speaking StrengthsFinder language to me and to themselves. And giving people that sort of access to understanding how they're wired and a roadmap behind why they behave in certain ways was really, really significant for me. And I guess the third reason, Andy, is that, I wouldn't be talking to you today. I wouldn't be approaching a certification that I consider very, very important. I wouldn't be pursuing becoming a Gallup certified StrengthsFinder coach. All of those pieces wouldn't even be part of my story. And so I guess, StrengthsFinder is such an important and central piece of my life right now. I really hate to think of what it would be like to not have it there, because it's such a great lens on every single part of who I am.
Well said. And I will say, when you share a common language of strengths, doors open. I've met more and more people just through talking about StrengthsFinder and made great friends and connections that I look back and think, man, if I didn't know these 34 terms, I don't know if them and I would have ever been able to identify something that we had in common. But just bring it up, whether it's a C-level employee of a large corporation or it's somebody who has a 100-acre farm across the river in Illinois, a lot of times you just start engaging them in conversation about strengths, and they say, "Oh yeah, I read that book, or I took that assessment several years ago. Tell me more about it." So it's really opened up a lot of doors and opportunities for me. And likewise, I wouldn't be creating this podcast if it wasn't for strengths. So Ted, do you have any closing comments, insights, or any stories you want to share with our audience before we close out this broadcast?
Well, I want to say thanks to you, Andy. It's you inspired my journey to pursue Gallup's certification as a strength coach. As I said, I sort of began to re-engage StrengthsFinder, discovered we had a certification available, and then began to think about pursuing it. What would it look like? And to be honest, as an independent coach, I didn't really have the financial resources to even consider, stepping out there and pursuing that. And I spoke with some of our friends at Gallup and just said, "Hey, guys, do we offer any scholarships? Do we do anything?" And they're like, "No, we can't because of our clients and who we work with, and we have to have one standardized pricing." And one of them said to me, "But we have had some success with some coaches that have done crowdfunding as a way to cover the expenses of their tuition and travel." And that little piece inspired me. And so I just Googled StrengthsFinder crowdfunding, and the very first piece that came up was yours. And so I watched your video from Indiegogo, and it created for me a sense of hope that I really could do this, that I really could go out and ask for people's support, and I could ask for their partnership, and I could offer my time and my expertise as a Gallup certified strength coach to coach them in exchange for them helping me achieve that certification. And that would never have happened, Andy, had I not seen your story, had I not sort of stumbled across your site, UnleashStrengths.com. And so I just want to say thanks to you for the work that you're doing to help make StrengthsFinder publicly available, to raise the level of awareness of its value in individuals and in organizations. And I just want to say a personal thank you, because I'm on a great journey, and I'm looking forward to attending my certification here in about 3 weeks and walking away a short time thereafter as a certified coach. And I just want to say a special thank you to you for inspiring the way.
Hey, no problem. It's the least I could do. I think when you feel something inside yourself that you know you need to pursue, and you know it's not only going to help you as a professional but help others, you got to do whatever it takes. You got to just blast out any roadblocks, any kind of pitfalls, and just follow your dreams. And when I started my crowdfunding campaign, I had no idea that it would be successful. I got lucky. I pushed and pushed and pushed, and I shared the link with everybody. And it's all about reaching those few individuals out there that have the financial resources and the belief in you as a professional to help you succeed. And we look at everything as a transactional engagement, this for that, and it can be that way, but there honestly is a lot of people in this world who just want to help others. That's all they want in return. So I think it's amazing that you're driving forward and you're pursuing this goal of crowdfunding, and I'm so excited to see what you're going to do as a Gallup certified strengths coach. You've already done a tremendous amount in 10 plus years of using the tool, and I'm excited that you took the opportunity to be on my show.
Well, thanks, Andy. It's my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity to share my story, and I look forward to our continued relationship and connection around strengths and who knows what other great impact in the world. Thanks so much, Andy.
Absolutely. And Ted, before we close this out one more time, why don't you tell our audience where they can find not only your website, but what you've done in the past? You have a beautiful website, by the way, so go ahead and throw that URL out there so somebody can pen it down and then go search it in Google.
Absolutely, Andy. Thanks so much. Yeah, you can find my story at www.Baird.com. And that's where you can also see the short video about my journey with Gallup Strength Finder, and click to participate if you'd like to help me achieve my certification. So you can find me at tedbaird.com.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to another episode of Thematics presented by UnleashStrengths.com. You can always cruise on over to the website, UnleashStrengths.com. Hit us up on Facebook, Facebook.com/UnleashStrengths. Twitter @UnleashCSF. Subscribe to us on iTunes. That's right, we're on iTunes for all you mobile listeners out there. Go to iTunes, the what is it called? The iTunes store? No, iTunes something or other. Type in Thematics. It's in there. Trust me, I listen to it all the time, not because I like to hear the sound of my own voice, but because I want to make sure that you guys are getting the best quality product out there. And if you want to be on the show, if you want to be a guest on Thematics, go ahead and shoot me an email, Andy@UnleashStrengths.com, or give us a call, 815-441-2219. All right, everybody, this is Andy from Unleash Strengths. I will talk to you guys soon. See ya. Thank you for listening to another episode of Thematics presented by UnleashStrengths.com. Remember to embrace your strengths and always stay addicted.